Good morning, everybody. Lee Brower here, and welcome to this week's edition of Meaningful Mondays. I'm going to talk to you today about junk and the real thing. I'm glad to be here because in reviewing my own journal, I continue to learn from junk and the real thing. Before I tell you about junk, I want to invite each one of you that has an interest in playing golf and is willing to come to Orlando on June 9th for the first ever wacky golf tournament at the beautiful, one of the most highly rated private golf courses in Central Florida. It's the Heathrow Country Club. If you're interested, please send me an email, lee@leebrower.com, and we're going to make special arrangements for you to be able to come there. We want you to be there if that's where you'd love to be. Junk and the real thing. Lori and I have had the opportunity several times, and I've had the opportunity working with families to take them through a particular exercise that we learned from Lisa Nichols. You might remember Lisa Nichols from The Secret. She was the one with the big afro and just a heart that's much bigger, and we've learned so much from her. And we've used some of the things that I'm going to talk to you about with her permission. This is an experience that we continue to learn from. And Michael Rouse invited us to come in and spend time with a nonprofit that he has called Dream Camp in Philadelphia. It's an amazing, amazing program. He's an amazing man. And the Rouse family is an amazing family. And but they have a year-round program for kids that are coming out of the projects. And he said, Lee, Lori, could you come out and spend a day with these kids and share with them principles of gratitude and self-esteem? And of course, I accepted, but I was scared to death. And as we got there, the first thing that we did, we look out on these kids, and they're all bright-eyed, and they're all ready to go, and they're there expecting something from somebody who's not from the projects. I'm not sure exactly what their attitude was, but I felt like they're just going to rip me to shreds. And so, but as we begin as we always begin, with positive focus. And I noticed that they embraced it. It was moving fine. The first break, a counselor brings a young boy up to me, and he says, he has something he'd like to say to you. And he says, Mr. Lee, I'm bored. Why am I here? And I, whoa, okay. So I got down to his level. He was probably the youngest one in the room, around 13. This room consisted of kids that were aged 13 to 17. And I said, well, Mr. Mike carefully selected everybody that was invited to come to this event today. And I believe, and he believes, that if you take good notes, you'll learn one thing that can change your life. Would you be willing to take good notes so you can find that one thing? And he said, yes, sir. And he went back, and I watched him, and he was taking good notes. So at that time, I challenged everybody in the room to find the one thing. At the next break, the counselor came up to me, and he said, do you know the story behind that young man? I said, no, I don't. And he said, well, 3 days ago, he was just released from the hospital because he attempted suicide. And I'm like, oh no, what did I say to him? And as the day went on, it went fairly smoothly. And we got into where we talked about, among other things, we talked about that the event does not equal the outcome. How you respond to the event equals the outcome. E plus R equals O. E does not equal O. Another thing that happened in that day is that we had a young man sitting over to the side who was obviously very popular. And the girls would giggle. I had no idea what he was saying, but it was distracting. So I took him aside at a break, and I said, you are quite the leader. You're an amazing leader. I've noticed how people follow you, and the one thing that all leaders have is followers. Now you have a choice, and your choice is to be a leader in this room or outside of this room. That's your choice, but make it right now. And he sat back and he said, well, I'll be a leader in the room. I said, great, come on in. We then took him through this experience that we learned from Lisa Nichols. I asked each of them, and let me ask you, has anyone ever told you that you had low self-esteem? Have you ever thought to yourself that I have low self-esteem? And then I asked them, to identify all of the great characteristics of a toddler. And we started writing them down on 2 whiteboards, and we filled them up. This is just a smattering of some of the things that they said. They said that they're kind, they're relentless, they're honest, they're loving, and so on. And then I would stop and I would say, all toddlers? And they go, yeah, all toddlers. Tell me some more. So, well, they're expressive, they're uninhibited, they're trusting, they're forgiving. They love themselves. All toddlers? Yes, all toddlers. Well, tell me some more. And we were writing them up on the boards. I had kids up front writing. They're forgiving. They're very appreciative. They're happy. They're determined. They're relentless. And I would get comments like, how many times are they willing to get up and stand up and walk? If they didn't have determination, they would never learn to walk. But they get up, they fall down, and they get up again. All babies? Yeah, all of them. They're very trusting. I can remember me putting my daughter up on a china cabinet and she jumping to me. I'd say, jump, she jumps. They're very forgiving. They're very loving. They're uninhibited. They'll take their clothes off in public. They don't care. They will tell you what they think. They will ask for what they want. All of them? Yeah, all of them. Even you? Yeah, I guess so. What happened? What happened? And then we would play the commercial from the Coca-Cola commercial, from The Real Thing. It's the real thing, And so we would have the clear glass vase. And as I'm having them yell out the real thing, we said the real thing is your self-esteem. You were born with it. God gave it to you. It's your gift from God. Treasure it. Treasure it. And so as we started, they yelled it out. They were treasuring it by yelling it out. And as they yelled it out, Lori poured the real thing into this pitcher, and she got it up about halfway. And then she stopped, and I looked at him, and I said, do you ever put junk on? Do you ever let people put junk on your self-esteem? What do you mean? Well, have you ever let anybody say you can't do that? You're not good enough? You'll never do that? You're ugly? You're not good enough? Are you going to wear that shirt? Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. If you do that, you'll never be able to do that. Yes, and they started yelling those things out. My dad said this to me. He says it to me every day. And they started yelling out. And as they're yelling these things out, Lori starts pouring oil on top of their self-esteem. And as she pours the oil on her self-esteem, it sits on the oil. It doesn't penetrate it. It just continues to go up. So as it gets up a little ways, I hold up the pitcher and I said, has your self-esteem gone down? No. What's happened? We've allowed people to put junk on our self-esteem, and we put junk on it ourselves. Do you? Yes, because we also say we can't do it. Oh, so what you say is putting junk on your self-esteem as well. I can't do it. I've never been able to do it. I'm not good enough. So you let other people influence you with their junk, and you pour more junk on your self-esteem. So now they're continuing to pour it out as we continue to fill this thing up with oil, the junk that's sitting on your self-esteem. Has your self-esteem gone down? No. No. But you've just allowed other people to put their junk on your self-esteem. You've allowed yourself to put junk on your self-esteem. How do you deal with that? Well, you want to hide it, so you wear a mask. We all wear masks. There were people in there. There was the jock that was the mask, and he had this thing, and there was the guy that had to be humorous, and he wore his mask, and there was the one that was whatever, and they wore their mask, and there was the cheerleader that said, "Wow, there's my mask." Whatever the mask is, they wore it. I wore a mask in there that day. I didn't want kids to see my junk. I didn't want the other people. When you go to someplace you've never been before, you're wearing and putting on your junk as well. We all hide beneath that mask. We don't want people to see our low self-esteem, the junk that we've put on our self-esteem. So we poured glitter on top of it. That was the glitter that represented what we do to cover up our junk. How do you get rid of that? Through a number of exercises and working with it. Eventually we came back to the point was, well, we've got to get back to those God-given gifts that we received when we were born. And they got so excited they started yelling them out again. And as they yelled them out, we poured in more Coca-Cola, and it pushed the junk right all the way out till it fell out into a cake pan. Was the junk gone? No. But was it sitting on your self-esteem? No. We've all got that. And you know what's bad is not only the junk we put on ourselves, but we put it on others. There's a quote, I think it was by Neil A. Maxwell. It says something like this. I'm going to have to paraphrase it. If a person only had the self-esteem that you had put there, would he have enough to draw upon and to sustain himself? So are you putting, as leaders and as parents and as brothers and sisters and as teammates, are you putting junk on other people's self-esteem? Do you keep them from being at their creative best, to be able to grow within your company, to be able to do the things that you want to do with them? How about your children? Are you putting junk on their self-esteem? How can you help them lift that junk, to be themselves, their true selves? Develop empowering questions. Can I lift this person? Can I add? Can I take junk off of this person's self-esteem and expose more of that for them? That's what great leaders do. The end of the story, at the end of the day, I had raise your hand if you found that one thing for you. And all the few hands go up, and I said, okay, we're going to hear from you. You'll be number one, you'll be number two. And there's this honest little 13-year-old boy raising his hand like this. And I was a little bit worried because he was a little too honest for me. But 3, I said, okay, you're number 4. So when it got to him, he stood up and he grabs hold of the microphone. And he looks around the room. Now remember, he's the youngest boy in the room. Everybody in the room knows his history. I learned today that the event does not determine the outcome. My response to the event determines the outcome. I learned today that I'm not going to let anybody put their junk on my self-esteem ever again. And he sat down. Now, I'm kind of a boob. I couldn't talk. I looked to Lori. Lori couldn't talk. It was dead silence. Then over here on the side, this leader stands up and goes. And pretty soon the whole room applauded. We saw the gift from God. We saw the self-esteem rise. We can elevate as leaders when we stop putting junk on our self-esteem and we find ways to help others take the junk off of their self-esteem. Enjoy this week. We're going to have something special for you next week. You will enjoy it. Have a meaningful week. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.